Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, we're going to start. Yes, seriously, afternoon, just barely. So, my name is Ray Davidson. You can't see it because the pink is not right, but I'm a purple team guy. That was back when I had purple hair. The important part of this is that it's not all the letters. Right, okay. Not all the letters after my name, but it's these particular letters here. I've been around for so long that I wrote my thesis using VI. It was way long ago before it even had the M. So I've been around for a long time. I first started working as a pharmaceutical scientist for a large pharmaceutical company. They make drugs that you all know and love. Hopefully you're not old enough to have to take them yet unless you have high cholesterol or other male problems. After a while, I worked for Purdue. I taught networking and security for a couple of years. I helped a small company called SANS spin up a master's degree program. And when they got tired of me, I started working for the state of Michigan. And what I'm going to talk about today is the Michigan Cyber Civilian Corps. I hope you all looked at your agenda, and that's why you're here. If you're looking for something that involves a lot of code, a lot of math, you'll be disappointed. I can do it, but not in this talk. The reason I wanted to talk about, or the place I got the title for this talk, talking about a National Guard for Cyber and what about a Cyber Civilian Corps, is I saw this article on CNN Tech from South by Southwest, where a representative from Texas, it's actually two representatives from Texas, have been talking about having a National Guard for Cyber. The issue being that it's difficult to get people who know this stuff to come work for the government. And in this case, they're talking about the federal government, but generally to get us to behave and look like government people. You can see here, we don't want to man a machine gun. So, and you know, I'm all about it as a video game, but like in real life, don't think so. So I saw this, and I thought to myself, in my mansplaining voice, well, actually, in Michigan, we do this already. We have a Michigan Cyber Civilian Corps. Well, that color is really, some of my compatriots don't look too good there. We have in Michigan a bunch of trained civilians who volunteer to provide expert, and you can use that word as broadly as you like, assistance in the time of cyber emergency. And we'll talk about what is a cyber emergency a little bit too. But currently we have 70 members. About 70 members, or 70 people that have received the congratulations email saying you've qualified. We actually heard back from over 60. The governor has been so pleased that he set us a goal of 140, like double that by the end of next year. So that's part of the reason I'm out shaking the trees, because if you're not already a member of the MIC3, and there are members around you, among you, spying on you, sitting next to you, but if you're not already a member, you may want to be one. So you're seeing this, and you're thinking, how many of you have not heard of the Michigan Cyber Civilian Corps? And you came to the talk anyway. That's awesome. So those of you that have not heard of it, and you're hearing me talking about it, you're probably thinking to yourself, well, how did we get here? So the way we got here was, initially there was some conversations between Governor Rick Snyder, whose Twitter handle is here, One Tough Nerd. He's a pretty geeky guy. I try and stay out of politics. It's very difficult these days, but he has been super supportive of this program. He made an announcement in 2013 at the North American International Cyber Summit. This is a meeting that happens every year. It's international because it's in Detroit, and you can see Canada from there. So he made the announcement that we were going to do this in 2013. This was after some conversations with Dan Lorman, who some of you may know or know of, that started in 2011. So he made the announcement we're going to do this, and it was, as far as I can tell, the vision was to have a group of trained individuals who would respond to a cyber emergency in the event of a governor, in the event that the governor declared one. So that was 2013. The initial partnership started between the state of Michigan, the Merit Network, who is also here, and some of you know about their cyber range. So this was in conjunction with Joe Adams. And the Michigan Health and Human Services provided the back-end infrastructure for some of the databases and personnel handling, that sort of thing. In 2015, program management was moved into the state, which is where, actually they didn't hire me for a year later. So they hired me in 2016. At the same time, there was a 20th Century Infrastructure Commission report, which gave us a goal of 200. I said 140. We're still going back and forth about how many people we can get, and it depends on how well you do. So this is a test. If I get enough of you to sign up and pass the tests and everything like that, then maybe they'll give us the higher goal. And I am not incented on any of this. I'm a contractor, and basically I don't like to work anyway. This is the thing that I do for fun. We all have our perversions. So this is really bad. Can you read this here? Oops. I know you can't now. Can you read that? It's pretty bad, huh? Well, so I'm going to tell you what it says then, because I'm the speaker. In a formal way, what the Michigan Cyber Civilian Corps does is to, as I said, respond in the event of a cyber emergency. We operate in the event that there were such a cyber emergency, and have any of you heard of one? There hasn't been one. But in the event that there is, and just like in your businesses, you would have a business continuity disaster recovery plan, Michigan has a cyber disruption response plan, and the Michigan Cyber Civilian Corps is actually mentioned in this cyber disruption response plan. We would be activated at the highest level of emergency, and we would operate under the state emergency operations coordinator. And the SEOC, or State Emergency Operations Coordinator, is a member of the Michigan State Police. That's just how it is. There's a lot of organizations that would be involved in the event of an emergency, but the state police, there's a person in the state police that would serve as the highest authority. Doesn't mean we all are law enforcement. We'll talk about that in a minute. Currently, we are regular participants. The MIC3 is regular participants in tabletop exercises with our partners, which include the National Guard and the Michigan State Police. So we work alongside them, but we are not either of them. We have today will be signed House Bill 4508, which is the bill that authorizes the existence of the Michigan Cyber Civilian Corps. You will notice that people had this idea back in 2013, and they didn't. The devil is in the details, right? So you have your first idea, especially if you're a high-level manager, you say, "Oh, this is a good idea," and people go off and do your bidding. So it's taken a little while to get around to the idea that we have to have a law. In particular, in Michigan, it must be legally authorized that you do a background check on people. This is my theory, that you can't just go do background checks on people and then say, oh, you're not qualified for something. So it can't be just arbitrary. So if you want to do a background check on people, like an FBI level background check on people, it has to be legally authorized. That's one of the things that House Bill 4508 is going to do, and that's going to be signed by the governor today. It's passed the House, passed the Senate, went back to the House for reconciliation. But if all we do is respond in the event of a cyber emergency, well, that's like a waste, because, as I say, we've never had a cyber emergency, and if we're all lucky, we'll never have one. So there are other things we can do with all this giant sixth grade educated brain power we've got, for those of you that used to watch Beverly Hillbillies. We got a bunch of InfoSec professionals that are getting together, and we could do some things perhaps to even avoid having a cyber emergency. So if we're lucky, it never happens. So the kinds of things that we're doing now are, in fact, defining what is a cyber emergency. And obviously there's going to be different levels, right? How many of you do incident response of some sort? Well, I mean, so you do some sort of incident response because, like, if you have pets, they leave a puddle or something like that. So you know that whenever you respond to something unexpected, there are different levels of response. And currently in the cyber disruption plan, we don't actually respond until level 5, which is really bad, like power goes out. But there are other things that we could be doing. So we're defining levels of response. We're also rationalizing processes with our partners, the Michigan State Police and the National Guard. if you get deep into what they do, you know, the state police being law enforcement, a primary consideration of theirs is preserving evidence, because they're really, their formal job is about crime. Now, I work closely enough with them that they're pretty cool that if somebody calls them in for help and they're not going to press charges, you know, the state police, the guys that work there, are not always going to be too much of a stickler about that sort of thing. They may just help the business get back up and running. If the National Guard is called in, there are limits on what they can do, because those are federal monies. These are tax dollars at work, and there's all kinds of laws. You may have heard of Washington, D.C. and Congress. They put restrictions on these kinds of things. So there's limits on what the federal government can do. The MIC3 is not actually subject to a lot of those limits, and we try not to be. So but still, we need to reconcile our processes. We need to determine who can do what and how we can continue to communicate together. The other thing we need to do is to determine what tools we're going to use, because in the event of a cyber emergency, you know, if you've ever gotten called together to respond to something with a bunch of people you don't know what they know, you don't know what tools they're used to using. So particularly in this area where there are expensive tools, if we have somebody, say, from a large auto manufacturer or a large healthcare concern, they may be completely used to using very expensive information security tools, whereas some of us that work at smaller financial institutions, credit unions, say, or mom and pop retail institutions, we may only have open source stuff. So when we get together, we need to know that we have shared processes and tools that we all know together. So we are actually in the process of working to develop those now. We're trying to be a little proactive and do a little community service. Currently, we don't require that of our members, but it's coming for those of you that are members. And practice, practice, practice. That's how you get to Carnegie Hall, right? This is just to say that we have an ongoing partnership with these folks, the Michigan State Police. This is the Air Guard and the Army National Guard, and that's us. So House Bill 4508 is the one that's going to be signed today. If you think about the details of this, if you have a business and you call a bunch of yahoos that you've never heard of, and I don't really mean to use the word yahoo that way, but a bunch of people that you don't know to come in to help troubleshoot on your network, you want to know something about them, right? And what if they make a mistake? As one of the information security professionals that's coming in to help you on your network, I don't know what I'm going to see, so I want to be indemnified so that if I do my due diligence, I do my good faith effort to help you, and something happens, I want to make sure you're not going to sue myself. And so 4508 is going to provide liability and immunity, and it's a Good Samaritan kind of legislation, as well as provide for how we would be deployed in the event of some event. It's going to authorize, I mentioned that to have an FBI check requires legislation. This will do that. And a national criminal history check. Benefits. It's a good deal all around. There are benefits for the member, for their employer, and also for society. In terms of benefits, we provide training. Once a year, we have, when I say once a year, we've done this for 2 years now, so it's like it happens once, and we always do it this way, right? But for the past 2 years, we've done training, SANS training. For those of you that are not familiar with SANS training, talk to me afterwards. It's pretty high quality stuff. In 2016, we did the basic incident response training, and I've listed there the certification GCIH, which satisfies Department of Defense Rule 8570, which means that most of us on the MIC3 are mil-spec, which is cool. We can say that to management, right? We have mil-spec quality responders. This year we did Security 511, which is the continuous monitoring class. We chose this because it's a good build on the initial incident response class. So incident response is like when it hits the fan and you're responding to something just to fix it. 511, The monitoring class gives you the ability to go back to your employer and put some things in place so maybe you don't have to respond to an emergency so quickly. In terms of professional development, the MIC3 gives people the opportunity to interact with other information security professionals across the state, which, aside from things like GrrCON, is kind of difficult to do. We use Slack. We have regular meetings, so we talk to each other. It's a great way to share information. And some people actually have, get a warm fuzzy from giving back to the community. And we like an excuse to, like a project. I don't know how many of you have labs in your basement, but one of the problems I always have is, I got all this cool stuff, I want to do something with it. But, what do I do? So this kind of thing gives us a way to get projects. So if we have a scenario we're going to run through, then that's something you can put in your lab at home. The MIC3 has achieved some national recognition in the past couple of years since we've been getting a more robust infrastructure in place. We were winners of, I know that if you're in cybersecurity, you don't give a care about the State Scoop IT Innovation of the Year Award, but it's cool for other people. It gets press. We won, this is actually a cool thing, the North American Society of, the National Association of State CIOs State Recognition Award. So it's like one award. So we won it for all the states. We're nominated for the CSO 50 award, and we are working with the NGAs, the National Governors Association. We're working with them to prepare a guide for other states that want to do something like this. There are a number of states listed here that have reached out to us for guidance about how you would set something like this up. And in fact, I'm going to be out in Seattle in the beginning of December working with a day-long meeting of people, including their National Guard and State Police, to talk about what we've done here in Michigan. So now you're all excited. You want to be members. So what do you have to do to be a member? Membership requirements. You have to have a couple of years of InfoSec network administration experience. You have to know a little bit about what you're doing. Much as I like noobs, we're not starting with novices. You need one accredited security certification. That gives us just a baseline from which to work. We know that everybody has sort of a base level of knowledge. And we can argue about certifications. I have those discussions too. Everybody's right, but we have to set a baseline. You need to get your employer, if you have one, to agree that you can have at least 10 days to come work with us. The way that shakes out is we've done 5 or 6 days of training. We have 2 one-day exercises. We did one at Ferris State last year. We have monthly telecons, so this is like a half-hour to an hour-long meeting, but every month. And we really want people to attend because this is how we communicate with each other and provide the professional development and networking. And that doesn't even count incidents. Fortunately, we haven't had any, but we got to know that if there is one and we call you up, that your employer is going to at least seriously consider letting you go. Now, we are quite aware of the issues around first responders. If your family is threatened, we understand there's going to be a conflict, and we don't have any legal hold on anybody to say you have to come in the same way that like the National Guard or law enforcement does. But still, it's a serious commitment, and we are providing something of value in terms of the training. SANS training it ain't cheap. And so we have an expectation that if we provide training, you're going to take the time to take the exam and pass the exam, because we want to show the state that we're doing something useful with their money. We're all taxpayers, after all, and you don't want the state investing something in somebody and not having them taking it seriously. Once you are qualified, then you can take the exams to become a member. The exams, there are 5 tests. The first one is a basic networking and security test. If you pass that, you unlock basic IR and basic forensics tests. If you pass the basic one, it unlocks the advanced tests. So you don't have to pass all 5, you can fail one. Once you qualify to that degree, we'll run an FBI background check. We take fingerprints and make sure that you don't have any disqualifying conditions. And I'm not going to make that list, but because we haven't had to make that decision yet, because we're all perfect, right? We ask your mom, are you a nice person? And that's cool. You have to sign a confidential disclosure agreement, and this is something that we're working on with the community. We may have people, I mentioned large automobile manufacturers, for instance, which could be an issue in Michigan. If there's an incident at one, they may or may not want somebody coming in from another competitor to help out with a security incident. Now, I know that in practical standpoint, they've got big security teams, so we're probably not going to be called into Ford or General Motors. But you understand that, let's say at a small financial institution, they might not want a competitor coming in and seeing private information. So if you're interested, this is me. My email address, this is my state email address, davidsonr5@michigan.gov. I'm the project manager. I know that you probably want to know about all the exciting incidents we've handled. As I mentioned, there's not been a cyber emergency declared, so most of what we've been doing has been tabletop exercises and training and theoretical exercises ourselves, but it is a real thing. And so we want people to sign up. The website is micybercorps.org. That's a redirect to a state of Michigan site, but we own the domain. And I have about 3 minutes for questions, if you have any. Yes, ma'am.
Two questions, actually. One is, what is the criteria for an emergency? And the second one is, are you guys ready?
So there are two questions for the video. One is, what is the criteria for emergency? And the second one's, are we subject to FOIA? The second one first, it's in the 4508, and I believe we are exempt in the same way that other emergency, well, clarify what you mean by are we subject to FOIA? Like,
I'm curious, even that you're doing opening on whether that is being protected or not from unless urgency from
right. So the question is what is subject to FOIA. We do telecons and nobody records them, and they're fairly informal, actually. It's the sort of just what's going on, who's talking to what kind of things are happening in the space. It's a reasonable question, and this is where we are. I mean, you're seeing this develop in real time, folks. This is where we are in terms of what do we need to be doing about things like FOIA? We don't want to be hamstrung by a lot of regulations. At the same time, for a lot of stuff, I mean, I'm here talking to you, I'll tell you anything. So we want to be as transparent as possible also. But if we were to be called into an incident, we would not reveal who it was with, what the details of that are, because we would be we'd be operating under the State Emergency Operations Coordinator, and so before we even find out that we might be activated, we hear a little bit like, we have an incident a potential incident that might require somebody with, say, SQL experience. I'm making this up. And then I would go out to our membership and say, who's got this kind of experience? They might be in this quadrant of the state, but that's all I even know. For obvious reasons. So any FOIA request would probably come to the state police. I don't know that, but we are not going to be responding directly to a FOIA request. What was your first question? Oh, what's an emergency? In terms of the cyber disruption plan, you can find it online, except for the appendices where all the good stuff is, because they don't want to put that online, of course. But I'll tell you that if we were to be activated, it would involve the governor saying that it's a state of emergency. Yes, sir.
You said you don't have to come, but I'm worried about, I often say, yeah, you get 10 days a year, and the emergency that they're asking me to respond to has already been in my mind, so I don't need to be free to say, no, it's not.
So the question is about the relative importance of your job, your employer who's paying you money, and an incident that involves somebody else, and where we're asking your employer to release you from the job that you have to do, which might be dealing with a portion of that emergency. What I can tell you is that our agreement is not legally binding, so we can't. There's nothing we can take away We can't sue you if you don't show up. What I can do is to suggest that you go on inactive status, which means you don't get to come to training next year. You don't get to come into the Slack channel. You know, and some people would like that, right? So it's a volunteer organization. At this point, it's fairly informal, and we depend on the goodwill of one another. And we haven't been taken advantage of yet. And we're all good people, right? We're in the Midwest. We use duct tape and baling wire, right? And we help each other out. So don't do that. We have to think about it, though. It's a good question. Any other good questions? Yes, sir. Do we have an agreement with SANS for their training? Why do you ask that? Can you elaborate? If you what? Oh yeah, we pay for it. Yeah. That is like the hugest part of our budget is paying for the training. And we try to pick very high quality training. And because it's a substantial expense, I mean, you can imagine it's not as much as you as an individual would pay. We get a group discount. But it's not special for us. SANS will give a group discount. And I'm really clear. I used to work for SANS, so I'm very transparent about that. I happen to agree with most people that think SANS is great training, but I'm seriously looking for other training of that quality. So if anybody has any, please let me know. We're looking to some non-SANS training for this coming year. Yes, sir.
Are there residence requirements? Are you looking to involvement from people in neighboring states?
So the question is whether we're open to involvement from people in neighboring states. I would say theoretically, sure, because initially when this started, we had an idea that we needed teams scattered around the state, and that's pretty hard to do. We have most people concentrated in the southeast side of the state. Our UP representation is notable and remarkable. We have wonderful people in the UP, both of them. But you know, we work with the population, and it's also possible that, you know, most of us have laptops and cell phones. So responding to an incident, as long as communications is up, we can work from anywhere. As far as other states, there's not a firm requirement, but rather than get involved with Michigan, I would suggest that maybe you help. Like, I know Indiana is interested in doing something like this. Maybe we could get some exposure to one another and expose ourselves to one another. Don't put that on the tape, right? And you could go back to Indiana and do your own thing. I guess maybe not put that on the tape either, huh? That's it. That's all the time I got. The MIC3 does have a table right inside the door, and we will have stickers later this afternoon, so y'all come. Thank you.